Some spread about. Inside, ignore the mugshot. Inside you've got a brochure and some information on NewMed. And for those of you that don't know, as I know most of you do now, we actually work with both EMIS and, have you got any vision sites here?
We have
I know
one,
there are
but
some,
not,
yeah.
only one.
Not here, but not here, right. I won't go that way. We actually work with both. We're partners with EMIS, and we actually integrate ECGs, spirometry, 24-hour blood pressures, 24-hour ECGs and event recorders into the record. Spirometry being the big one, you can put up to 23 read codes straight into EMIS, into the consultation. So it makes it much easier to do a full spirometry. Also in your packs, you've got information on our patient information screens, which are nice flat LCD screens which go onto the wall. They have lots of patient videos and they can be scheduled just like your iPod. So you can build a playlist and you can decide who gets to see it. So if you've got a baby clinic on a Wednesday afternoon, you can actually schedule Wednesday afternoon for it to show breastfeeding information, immunisation, so you can target your audiences, and it can also be used as a course system and it links with EMIS as well. So enjoy reading. My contact details are in there if anybody wants any information. Have fun.
Thank you very much, Joyce. It's always a pleasure, and
I know you just love insulting.
I hope it's not too slippery a drive back to Dunbar.
I'm sure it will.
Well, it might be. I hope.
No, I've got four-wheel drive.
All right. You can still go in the ditch with a four-wheel drive, in my experience.
No.
And you can't get out, Neil.
Yes, well, quite. There you go.
See, we females in the room will
Pleasures
say
of being a farmer.
them.
Thank you very much, Bruce.
No problem. See
Right.
you again.
Welcome to you all. And thanks particularly to Ben for coming to spend some time with us. The gang from EMIS are about to sort of parachute in 15 minutes. Oh, you're here! Sorry. I didn't see you there.
You're sitting quiet in the corner.
But you're more than welcome also. Sorry, how embarrassing. I should have gone to Specsavers. So we're going to kick off with a talk about the soon-to-be delivered order comms system, which will be largely for ordering laboratory tests and x-rays, and it's going to come directly from the practice electronically into the laboratory system, and Ben's going to tell us a little bit about how that's going to work, particularly obviously from a GP perspective, but how the reporting and that sort of thing will hang together. And Steve, how many of you met Steve the day before? Steve's from the IT department in Dumfries, and he has the joy of the project managing all of this and actually making it all work and happen. So when it doesn't work, you'll know who to call. I'm sure it will do. Anyway, thanks Ben, and welcome to
over to me then, yeah.
The sort of warm and sunny climes of Dumfries and Galloway.
I'm only taking the scarf off because I'm on video.
Right, away you go.
Okay, my name is Ben Dorks. I'm Chief Technical Officer for Plumtree Group, and what that basically means is I'm the geek in the room. So what I'm going to do today is show you order comms. So this is the ability to order blood tests, radiology tests online. So if you like, it's Amazon online for blood tests and radiology tests, and also then putting the results back into the system as well. So it will also give you a view of all of the diagnostic results for a particular patient. So you'll get everything that's done both within the GP community and also in the hospital. What I'm aiming to do is I'm going to give you a sort of 15-minute whiz round of what it does, and then obviously any questions that you have around the application and how it actually may work for you, then feel free to throw them my way. And then Steve's sort of going to go through the implementation plan as to exactly how this is rolled out and deployed to GP practices in this specific area. But if you want any examples, I can also give you examples of how we have done this in various other parts of the country and also in other countries as well. So this is the front screen, so this is the order comms screen. You launch to here via your EMIS system, so as soon as Chris Jones, who I'm sure you're aware of, signs his agreement, then this will actually enable you to launch from your EMIS system. So directly in the toolbar at the top, you'll be able to launch from the EMIS system, and it will launch with inpatient contact. So it will launch here with James Brown. His address details are brought across as well, and it will also know which surgery you are at and which user you are on. So there's very little, it's if you like a lights out process. All you've got to do to get to this point is click one button from within your patient screen of the EMIS system. Once here, you can see here how it has a list of requested tests down here at the bottom. Now, each individual clinician can set up their own favourite tests down here at the bottom. So you can actually configure this to your own particular requirements, and I'll show you very quickly how you can do that. So each individual clinician can have their own little favourite section of tests, and all you've got to do to order a test is pretty much as you do at the moment, which is tick a box in a form, is tick a box on the screen. There are also some other clever things behind the system. So if I'm doing a full blood count, and these are all examples, it's not necessarily how you're going to have it exactly set up, I'm just showing you examples. You can see here how it will ask if it's a fasting or a non-fasting specimen. I click the box, press OK, and then I'm able to process this on. And I then save and process this form. I ask where it's going to be taken, so is it going to be taken now, is it going to be taken in the practice, the hospital? Am I going to print an outpatient appointment form? I press OK, it will go away and try and find a printer, which it's decided it wants to do tonight, so apologies about that. And it will then print out an appointment form for that patient. So there we go, sorry about that, it's finding a printer. Now the reason it prints out a form, it doesn't actually technically need to print out a form, but what we've found in all of our other sites is if you don't give a piece of paper to the patient to say go and get a blood test, then it seems to go out in one ear and out the other. So we still print out just on an A4 sheet of paper the form to give to the patient so they can then go for their phlebotomy test. And from a requesting point of view, that's all the GP actually has to do. So it's very quick, very simple for making a blood test. When the patient comes back in with their form, then they will present that form to the phlebotomist, and the phlebotomist will be logged into this particular screen here. So they will log in, they will scan that form in or enter the patient's forename and surname, apologies it still tries to find my printer, and it will turn around here and it actually tells you which specific tubes the phlebotomist needs to take. So every single test in the system is actually linked to a tube type and a tube colour. It will also tell you whether there's one count or two specimen counts required for that particular tube. So if, for instance, the laboratory decided that full blood count now needed 2 tubes to be taken, it would automatically say that you need to print out, collect two red tubes rather than the 1 red tube. And that's automatic, so there's no notifications and 6 months of changing over process during this. It's automatic. And you can see here that phlebotomists will get plenty of warning that they need a red one and a fecund coloured one, whichever colour that is. They can choose the location that they're actually taking the specimen from, and then all they have to do is say, I'm now collecting the specimen. And what it will then do is print out 2 specimen labels to be adhered to the tube, and all the phlebotomist does is put those into the plastic bag. So there's no paper now travelling with that specimen bag anymore. It's literally everything is actually held in those specimen numbers, and these specimen numbers are actually the specimen numbers that the laboratory use. So the great advantage from the laboratory point of view is that whereas at the moment they do lots of data entry on your request forms, and I'm sure you have lots of issues as GP practices where it may not be entered correctly and it's a new patient, it doesn't go into the correct patient file within EMIS and all these types of things. All of that disappears because it's actually using the data from your EMIS system to populate the laboratory system. So when it gets into the laboratory, all they will actually do is they scan the barcode on the specimen tube, They press OK, it still tries to find the printer. It's already populated where the sample was taken, it populates the time and date of that sample. It said that it's not a fasting specimen, it tells me how many specimens there should be, and then I can just literally submit that into the Apex system, and that's all the laboratory have to do, and it then goes straight onto the analyzer. So their turnaround time should hopefully be a lot quicker, a lot smoother. Typically laboratories suffer with the fact that at 2:30, 3 o'clock, every GP specimen turns up within that 25-minute window, and they're having to do data entry on 1,000 request forms, hence the delays and the bank staff coming in later, and all the and often the sort of data entry errors that you sort of have to put up with at the back end. So all of that side of things is actually negated and reduced. When that's actually happened, then the results will appear within this system just here. So we can see that test that I've just processed there. We can see you will get a full history and status of where your requests are within the process. So if you log into the system, you can see here where things are in the process. You can see that actually you're still awaiting for this specimen collection from earlier today. And I have all the results here as well. So I can see the results here by discipline: cardiology, microbiology, blood science, radiology, histology. They're all held in those separate blocks in there. If I want to go and click on a haematology result, then I can actually see in here pretty much exactly the same way as you do at the moment, the blood science results. I can click on here, the various sections, and what I can then do is go away and it will graph those results for me, but it will actually graph every single result up to the last 20 for that particular hemoglobin, for instance. So cumulatively you can suddenly see the trending of the results without you having to go and see lots of individual results on the fly. The other great thing it does is that I'm also able to do that in, I've got clickinitis. I'm also able to do that in a table format as well, and just quickly select my colours and my ranges, and that by far and away is the most popular view that we have, and it will remember that view the next time that you go in. But what you'll also see within this patient summary screen is that I can actually I'll be bringing in the results regardless of where that request originated. So if a patient presented themselves to A&E and they had a full blood test in A&E on Friday night, they also had an X-ray for a broken leg, for instance, then when they present themselves to the surgery on Tuesday, rather than you having to chase around and try and find those results, all of those results would actually be displayed within the system as well. I also know that longer term there is the plan to be able to bring in things like the images as well, so that you can actually see the images and have a look at those images associated with things like radiology, cardiology and things like that. So it does enable you very quickly to look at, make the request, but also identify any results associated with that particular patient as well, and then interrogate those results probably to a greater detail than you can at the moment. If I show you a radiology request now, so I go to new request, radiology, I can, if I was in the system, I can enter the patient details like this as well, just by entering the KI number. So in the hospital, this is how it would actually work. And I've got a very different type of form just here. I can turn around and say that they're a walking patient, depending on the types of examination, because you have to put in a code, for instance, to say that you're able to make a radiology request. And then I've got here my different exam types. So if I wanted to do an MRI, it would then give me lots of options, and in this particular example it also gives me lots of questions that typically you have to fill in, and I know the radiology department then have to phone up and chase certain answers to, so it tries to reduce that down as well. And then I'm able to make my MRI question, so I can have a chest, for instance, and then it will automatically give me all the different options of what a chest option is, and then I can also do my lower limbs and select my left femur, for instance. So very quickly I can make a request, and I can do that by modality within each radiology. If I change that and say that I just wanted to do a simple CR, for instance, then that list of questions gets much smaller. And this is all rules based, so it's linked to both gender and age constraints and clinical constraints as well, so that it will only enable you to order the types of tests that you're actually able to order for that patient type. And all those rules are actually controlled by the health board, so you know, anything you're not happy with, don't complain to me, complain to Steve. So very quickly I can then change anything within this as well. You can see here how it will link to that patient summary for this particular kind number, which takes me back to that patient. So every single time I log in with a patient identification, it will turn around and provide me with that. Behind all of the system there is a full audit, so I can see here the result audit, and it will then tell me every single time that we've looked at any particular result. So you can see here that we've looked at this result on, you know, that's 6 times today I think I've looked at this result alone. So there's a full result audit, so every single time someone looks at any result within the system, both within the community section and also when this is in the acute, within the acute section, you'd actually be able to see everybody who's viewed that particular result. So there's a large information governance piece behind it, and a very large permissions matrix behind it as well, to only ensure that the right people are able to view the right results at any particular time. And for instance, one of the ways that this often works within other areas that we have is that GPs can view results across the whole health community, whereas a nurse practitioner may only be able to see results that have actually been requested from that GP practice. That's a very typical type of permissions matrix that we put in place to ensure that A, there's a legitimate patient relationship, but only the right types of results are being read by the right type of people. Behind all of this, then you have a configuration section that enables you to, as I mentioned earlier, to manage your own favourite tests. So you can easily then add in your own favourite tests for a particular discipline. And as you can see here, here's the types of tests that we have already. So additionally, I don't just have the ability to order those 5 tests that are actually in the boxes down here. I can go in and I can add tests from my very, very long list, which is all of the types of tests associated with chemistry and hematology. I may not actually know what they're called, so I can use the long description to find a test. So I want my blood alcohol test, and I want to add that to the request as well. Finally, and probably one of the best sections that most people like within the system, I have something here called a test group, and the test group is devised both at a health board level, but also each individual clinician is able to set up their own test groups. So a number of GP practices we have where they run special clinics for diabetes and things like this, actually set up their own test groups. And what that basically means is, instead of having to click on 15 different boxes, I have this linked to a care pathway, and I can click Tide all the time, and it will then go away and it selects all the clinical details I need for Tide all the time, of which I'm sure I've put in numerous. So we can see here I've clicked Tide all the time, and it's gone away and it's added in these 3 other tests for me as one block of tests. So very quickly you can set up those orderables for the 10 most common scenarios that you come across on a daily basis. It's just a question of going in and clicking one box and it does it all for you, and pressing save and go, and from your side of things that's pretty much all you have to do. You can link this, and some of these are futures. You can also link this into domiciliary requests, so where a phlebotomist has to go out to the home to collect the information, and so I'm able to put in things like telephone numbers. I can put in key safe codes required if it's a warden controlled building. I could put in if there's extra staff, I don't know, person takes hostages or whatever it may be, and I can enter all of that information in there. And there's also a phlebotomy section in here that enables you to choose a phlebotomy location. So I can go in and I can search on a specific location. I can turn around and say I want to select, I can ask the patient and say, so where do you want your blood test taken? what type of date or time would you like it taking, and it will then enable me to select that particular appointment time, and it enables the phlebotomist to plan ahead. This is something that's very common in some of the hospitals we work with outside of the UK, where phlebotomy is probably a far more advanced process than it traditionally is within the UK, where they have phlebotomy centres. So they will have lots of sensors located around their particular patch, and the person can choose which phlebotomy centre they want to go to, when they want to go, and their specific time slot. There is also the option for a patient to actually go in and change their appointment time and things like this as well. It also, more advanced even, links to mobile phlebotomy collection at certain places. One place we're working in London, so they will actually go to workplaces and collect it, and so they know, for instance, that they will go to, you know, Barclays Bank in the City of London every Thursday to do phlebotomy tests and things like this. That's one of the private hospitals, unsurprisingly, that wants to do that. But it is very much geared towards being more patient-centric, as well as just try to help you from a clinical point of view order blood tests a little bit quicker than you do at the moment. That was exactly 16 minutes, so I apologise, I was 1 minute over. Any questions?
Okay, thanks Ben. There we go. That's what's coming your way. Frowns or smiles?
I think a mixture.
Any comments or thoughts or questions about where that fits with what you're doing at the moment?
Will it backpopulate all the old results, or will it come on day one with nothing?
We are looking to, I'll answer this, okay.
Yes,
Look, we're looking to backpopulate with probably 3 to 6 months worth of data prior to your go live. So there will be enough data in there for you to be able to provide that sort of accumulative benefit of results, both from within your GP community and also any results that have come from the hospital in that time. The other thing that I forgot to say is that the request information that's done in there will have the ability, it will actually write back within your clinical history section on the EMIS system that you've made that request and you ordered a full blood count, UNE and a APTT, for instance, as well. Although it doesn't code it, it just goes in as a free text block.
Can you link it into a recall system for lab results? Like, you know, thinking somebody wants an annual thyroid check, can you fire it forward for 12 months and use it that way?
Yeah, there's a future
existing recall system.
There's a future requests section, so you can turn around and make requests so that it will actually turn around and say, I want it every 6 months for it, or I want it over a year period, and I want 12 intervals, and it will say then it'll book a request every 12 month every month for 12 months. So it will actually make those requests for you in advance, so when the patient turns up at phlebotomy, that request is actually already made. That only works for pathology, not for radiology.
Which makes sense. Ben, in terms of patient finding, if you want to go and look at reports,
Yeah.
you you're looking, perhaps you're sort of fiddling around in EMIS, you want to look at reports, it hooks directly through by hitting the button.
Yeah, absolutely. By hitting the button, it will take you to the new request screen, and every time you're within a new request screen, it will have that patient summary. So if I was in EMIS and I launched this patient here, I'll just cheat and do it like this. You can see here how it will populate the patient summary button just here, which means that it knows that there's existing information for that patient. Clicking on the patient summary will take me straight through to all of the results for that particular patient.
Okay.
If you wanted to, then from within the search screen, and this is a permission-based thing, I can search on a KI number. Yeah, I always use 111, it's easy for me. I can search and it will then bring me back that patient information, and I would then be able to go straight to that patient summary screen as well.
Okay.
That is a permissions-based thing, so it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody has the ability to search for a patient, and to be honest, most health boards and environments we work in limit them being able to only view patients which you've accessed directly from within your GP system, but the search option is there if as a health board you decide to turn that on or off as the case may be. Searching, by the way, is also limited to you have to normally know the KI number and the date of birth, for instance. It won't let you just search under a KI number.
Well, that's pretty easy. KI number and date of birth are basically the same thing, other than 4 digits. But so
Yes,
it's
of
a
course.
slightly flawed logic there. So never mind.
Yeah, it's got so used to NHS numbers.
So if we're looking at results as they come in, are they flagged as not being looked at yet or not actioned yet, or is that? I mean, because that's a functionality that we use in DocMan at the moment.
And that system is going to continue in place for the results that you have originated, that you have requested. Those results that you have requested will continue to populate in your system in exactly the same way as they do at the moment. So they will still be flagged in DocMan in exactly the same way. What this is really doing is giving you the ability to view results that are both originated from your GP practice and from within the hospital as well, and identify any sign-off process that may have happened in the hospital.
So we would be able to see that if somebody's looked at it and left
Yes.
a comment or
Any
an action.
any comment. So if this had originated in a hospital and a comment had been made, then it will tell me when those comments were made and who they were made by and all those types of things as well. So you would actually see that type of information. There is and it's not happening immediately, there is a process within the actual hospital for all results to be signed off by the relevant clinician within a relevant period of time. So they will receive notifications that a result is available for a particular patient, and then they should sign off on that actual result with any actions that they have undertaken from that result as well. That's the longer term plan, although that won't happen in the very near future.
There's not a workflow element to it. There's not a workflow bit to it. You get all your results from that day and look through them.
Yes, yeah. Within the hospital, there is that workflow element. But within the community, you would continue to sign off results in exactly the same way as you do at the moment within your clinical system, not within the Ordercom system, is the way that I believe Dumfries are wanting to.
I mean, the question is, would you want to have workflow of all of your lab reports?
Depends on how
Here.
easy it is.
Yeah.
Because at the moment, certainly in our practice, the workflow sign-off system that is within EMIS, we just said no, and you do it in DocMan and we scan it in, and because it's there in one go and it's much quicker and much easier.
I think most people are doing the same, probably.
I know some places don't, but we tried that and it just took hours.
In EMIS?
Yeah.
Yes, I think the functionality within EMIS is not great from that point of view. I think that's a kind of generally acknowledged.
It's just but if it was something to be signed off, you need to be doing it in batch. That you can sign off multiple results in one go, rather than having to sign off every single individual test.
So you would want to be able to sign off all of the biochemistry in one hit, you mean?
Possibly.
Yeah.
If you'd done a batch of tests that came back in, that you could click and then say, and group them all and then say normal, rather than have to say normal to each individual one with multiple ticks.
The system identifies results that are outside of the reference range anyway. So anything that is outside of the reference range gets flagged.
Every single use needs result in the EMIS system is classified as an abnormal because it can't recognise the fact that it was a greater or lesser than sign. So every single use need result came back in as abnormal.
I think we'll find the functionality of this is somewhat in advance of that.
Yeah. As far as we're concerned, we can identify an abnormal result. So there's a whole host of flags and rules and complicated stuff that I probably don't even understand myself that enables us to flag whether a result is normal or abnormal. Anything that is abnormal is within the hospital, for instance, gets a different workflow process. So if it's an abnormal result, they will get an SMTP, like an email or a text or whatever the case may be, to say there's an abnormal result available. If you want to roll that functionality out and you want to sign off within OCM, I suspect there'd be a a real push by the hospital to do that, because I know one of their key things is that they want to be able to achieve 100% sign-off results, and at the moment, within the way you do it at the moment, they have no visibility that you've actually done anything, you've read that result or seen that result or anything. So anything that provides a sort of more coherent process, so that everything is visible to everybody throughout the result life cycle, is going to be, I'd have thought, of real benefit.
But what happens if a patient wants to opt out of that for data protection?
All results.
That's not likely, but
basically, within the patient summary screen, you can make results confidential, and therefore they can only be seen within the hospital by a break glass, and they can only be seen by the registered GP.
but HIV test.
Yeah.
HIV is different. There are certain tests, results that can be made sensitive. So certain tests are sensitive tests, and again, they will only be viewable to the registered GP and within the hospital, within a break glass environment. So absolutely, HIV is the obvious one we always use, but there are probably another 10 or 15 that normally are also used in that type of scenario, and they are sensitive tests, and there's a whole rules base around that. So within this, there is a section, there's a whole configuration, permission section, which is very big and comprehensive, which I won't bore you with, but you can then sort of set up sensitive tests within there to say whether you're actually able to view sensitive tests or not.
Okay.
Does the system work across health boards? Because we have some patients who've got Cheshire and Arran.
No, but what you,
Well, where do all your lab specimens go?
Well, the majority of them do go to TGNI, but there's occasional.
in which case there is the option just to print a form, so you'd then just print the form out and they would data entry it as if you'd handwritten it. No difference at all.
I mean, obviously your patients go to Ayrshire, to the hospital to be seen in a clinic.
For an X-ray, for example,
Right.
we've got some patients who are, just in the border of Ayrshire and Arran, and it's easier for them to go for an X-ray.
The results won't display back in this system if they go from there to
They
Ayrshire.
just come back.
Yeah.
They'll come back in a bit of paper.
If you're lucky.
I'm sure Ayrshire are very good at sending the results. But
Next on the target list then.
yeah. Ben, you talked briefly about this process of printing the labels to stick on the bottles.
Yes.
What does that mean for label trace?
The system actually uses label trace as it's launched through from the API. So when we actually talk about it launching from EMIS, it actually uses part of the label trace application to do that. So it's the label printing is done in the system, but it's actually using label trace at the back end.
Right, so label trace is still there.
Label trace is still very much there, there's no change to it. You can use it in exactly the same way as you do at the moment, but it also supports the printing of this as well.
Okay. The other thing was on the radiology requesting, one of the boxes is the any previous relevant radiology, which is a complete pain in the ass because it means you've got to go and look
Find
something
all
up.
those.
But presumably all of the radiology requests are going to be in here. Is that going to pre-populate in some sort of a way, or are we just going to continue to leave that blank because we can't be bothered?
I would suspect the latter rather than the former.
Right.
The hospital will obviously have access to the system as well, because they will use it to actually submit their radiology requests into their RIS system. So I suspect that they can populate from there if they want. If it was a question of you want to put the last 5 radiology examinations that have been made into that box, then that's very easy to do. And I suspect that the RIS system, the radiology department, will pretty much ignore it like you do at the moment as well.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's relevant perhaps if they've had a radiology investigation somewhere else, like here, which is not obviously
exactly. I'd have thought that's probably more. I'm not sure. It's one of those things that every hospital wants in the boxes, but it's not necessarily something that I've ever really seen filled in. If I'm being really honest, it's they will make certain boxes mandatory or non-mandatory, as the case may be, and it needs to really be a partnership and a collaborative working partnership in ensuring that the boxes that the departments ask for are not prohibitive to you actually using the system. I know plenty of examples where the laboratory people and the radiology people get carried away at the rules and power they suddenly have over the requests that you're able to make, and then everybody turns around and says, well, I'm not using this, it's a right pain in the arse of a system. So there has to be a collaborative approach in ensuring that the information that they're asking for is relevant and is not prohibiting actually filling the system in the time it takes. The key thing is it has to be quicker and it has to be simpler from a clinical point of view. At the moment, most clinicians, they grab a label out the printer, they stick it to the top of the form, they tick a couple of boxes and they give it to the patient. And the system is trying to replicate that process as closely as you can, while bringing in a little bit more of governance and control and auditability within the process.
Okay. Presumably it can spit out reports on how much we're using the...
There's a good old report section. So
here... Sorry, you don't need to show us, just we're slowly... That's fine.
There you go, good old report. Look at that, a graph. Yeah. Everyone loves a graph.
Okay, cool. Alrighty, any other questions? That's a fairly sort of comprehensive run through, I think. So how do you feel about that? Good? Bad? Another change? I think it's quite slick. Okay. Steve, do you want to do your little bit in terms of telling us
I will, yeah.
what's going to happen next, if you like, in relation to this arriving? And then maybe Ben will take, if it's okay, we'll just have a quick discussion about the GP summary data stuff.
Yes, absolutely. I will.
That you can catch your breath while Steve does his bit.
That's absolutely fine.
It's obviously getting hot in here.
Well, I was dreading this part, having to take my jacket off, to be honest.
Well, have you got goosebumps?
It's just a bit fresh.
Fire away.
So my name's Steve Day, and my job will be to implement this system, working with Plumtree across both primary and secondary care. So it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be fun. And it's already started. The status we're at now, we are starting to configure the test information to get on the test system so we can start testing. Testing is going to be key to making sure that when we start rolling it out to people, it does what it says on the tin.
I feel like Ernie Wise or somebody like that.
Okay, so as Ben and Neil said previously, we're going to focus on the labs first. It's going to be biochemistry, hematology, microbiology. It's also going to be radiology as well. Now, we plan that Sky Gateway will no longer be used to do radiology referrals. It will be done through Coms instead. The functionality that you currently have, the rich functionality you currently have with Sky Gateway will not be lost. It will be replicated. You won't lose any functionality. It will just be as slick as it is now. So there shouldn't be any problems with that. Just a simple mindset change, but that's what we're planning to do instead. Just so we can make use of everything Ben's been talking about, the functionality, being able to see the results and the requests for a patient wherever they came from. In terms of looking at the results, we've already touched on the fact that within Coms you should be able to see the results that come back, whether from a primary, requested at primary care or secondary care. But also, in addition to that, the doc-man results will still come through as they do currently, but it will feed into the workflow process within the practice. This is just a simple example of a cumulative biochemistry report. It's not going to be the end product, it's just to demonstrate that we will be firing through an image of the results to you via doc-man, and that will go into your normal workflow process and get attached to the patient, viewed by the clinician. So you'll get, I guess the results you will see will be the best of both worlds. You'll get this attached to the patient if you need it. You'll also get the global view that Ben was describing previously. The rollout plan for this, like I say, we've already started to do the configuration. The pilots we've identified are going to be Galloway because it's an EMIS practice, Greencroft North, an EMIS practice. We're hoping to sign up Greencroft South because it's a vision practice, and we're hoping to speak to Dunsker because it has 2 branches to it. So we're just sort of using those to prove that it does what we need it to do, it has the functionality to be as flexible as we need. Okay, the way we're going to approach this, of those 4 pilot sites, we anticipate that Galloway will be the main one. They will be the chief guinea pigs, bless them. They're the ones that will sort of take the brunt of how we anticipate rolling it out. Any trials, tribulations, issues will hopefully get resolved at that site. From there we will refine it, we'll apply the lessons that we've learned, we'll see what we need to do better next time, and then we'll do the remaining pilot sites. So that'll be 4 in total. Once we've done that and we get sign off that everything went as planned, especially with the remaining 3 sites, that everybody's happy, that there's no problems, no issues, we will start to do the full rollout, and that will be at 2 practices a week, just so we can spend the quality time at each practice to ensure there's no issues. Okay, so when I say the quality time ensuring that there's no issues, we're going to have an engagement plan. We're going to have an initial kick-off meeting with the practice. This will be to say, well, how is it best to work with you? What days would you prefer, not prefer? What dates in the future can we start to pencil in to do this process? And let's start mapping the processes within the practice to ensure that when we do introduce a new system, we're not going to lose any functionality. So whatever your processes are now for gathering samples, for using nurses, district nurses, domiciliary visits, all this will be, we'll sit down and we'll map it all out to make sure that when we introduce the processes how we intend it to be, everything is covered. Site survey, just an hour, just to go through and double check what hardware, what software we've got installed at each practice to make sure that everything is as we would expect it to be. Then just an hour's technical preparation. All of these meetings take place over a number of days. It can be, depending on the practice, it could be a month, could be a week, it's whatever suits really, but this will be in stages. Then we come to the actual go live day, as agreed previously. Within the go live day, 3 sections. We'll have, starting early in the morning, I'll have training and any final technical changes. Once the training is completed and the technical preparation is completed, roughly about midday, it will be a decision whether to go live or not by the partners of the practice. If they choose not to, then obviously just carry on with the paper-based process, it's not a problem. If we decide to go live, the remaining half of that day will be floor walking support by both Plumtree and myself probably, to ensure that any issues can be dealt with there and then at the time. Further to that, the day after we go live, there will be more training and for the further floor walking support. And that will be with each practice. In terms of what I was saying about we're trying to do this in both primary and secondary care, so we've decided the best approach would be, let's focus on getting all the labs tests available and into primary care first. Then we'll take that and apply that to secondary care. This time back to primary care with the radiology. Obviously the rollout processes for that will be hugely reduced. The training will be negligible, and it won't be such an impact as it did with the first tranche of labs in primary care. And then again, repeating the same process for secondary care. In terms of timescales, We're anticipating the main pilot for Gilbury to take about 2 weeks. You know, dedicated time, get in there, let's get everything sorted, allow us time to sort out any issues. Based upon that and the lessons learned, the remaining 3 pilots we're hoping to do 1 a week, 3 weeks. But the full rollout, like I say, 2 practices a week, we'll be looking at covering over 4 months. During those 4 months there will be a dedicated implementation team rolling it out, but that doesn't mean that the next phase, which will be labs and secondary care, will start in parallel with that, to make sure that we're doing things as quickly as possible. Question that most people ask is, when is it coming? Definitely 2013. We did have an initial date in mind of saying, well, let's start, aim to roll out in about February to the initial pilot. At this stage, we've had hit a few snags. We're hoping we've overcome them. So we're still aiming at maybe late February moment, maybe early March. But obviously we will agree this with the main pilot practice before any of this goes to plan. And then we'll take it from there. Everything will follow on as we described. And that's me if you need to contact me if you've got any questions at all following this.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay.
Excellent. Okay, any
Questions?
comments, questions? How does that sound? Reasonably organised? You look astonished. Okay. I mean, obviously, you're right. Everyone's sort of wondering when it's going to be, and I think it would be helpful to have a. Do you have a, in terms of the rollout to the practices, Steve, a sort of schedule of, you know, how you're going to work that west to east, east to west, or sort of random spots around the place?
What we plan to do is look at the geography of practices. Like I said, we're looking to do about 8 a month. So we'd be trying, just for ease really, just to locate 8 in a relatively small geographic area and then move around. But we haven't identified whether it's going to be east first, west first, or anywhere in between.
Okay.
It's something that we'll work on the details as we get closer, I guess.
Right. Any bids for going next?
Well, if it's alphabetical, Annandale should really be.
That sounds like a reasonable ploy, John. Oh dear, not again, I hear you. Not again. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, Steve. I think that obviously it looks good, and I hope that you managed to sort out the issues with the laboratory bods and get them
Yes.
organised. You know,
Fingers crossed we will.
go and give them a good kicking. Right. The other thing that I was quite keen just to raise with you today was one of the opportunities around the electronic CaseNote system that's about to be deployed. It's currently working in the mental health unit, and obviously ultimately will replace the paper CaseNote in the infirmary. And one of the opportunities is for us to provide some GP summary data which could come potentially directly into the electronic CaseNote in the infirmary. Have you all heard about the emergency care summary? That's something you're familiar with? So that's been around for a little while now, but is largely just about prescription drugs, allergies, and adverse drug reactions, and obviously the patient detailed demographics and address and that sort of thing. We're quite keen to certainly take that sort of information and put it into the electronic CaseNote, but also some of the key significant problems with the significant active and significant past problems. Really just to give the doctors in the infirmary a little bit more information in terms of helping them when they're either seeing patients for the first time in a clinic or in a casualty department, or indeed if they're admitted to hospital. So Plumtree happen also to be the suppliers of the electronic case note, and there were some very obvious reasons for having an order comms sign-off system and an electronic case note kind of under the same umbrella for the infirmary. Ben has got a mechanism of extracting this information from EMIS Web, which you all stream your data to now, and actually presenting that within the electronic case note at the moment. So Ben, do you want to just give us a few words about that?
Yeah. It looks brilliant on here. Well, I'll just get the screen working. Basically what we're doing for the hospital is an eCasenote application. So the eCasenote application will enable the hospital to scan in their legacy paper records. But obviously with the move to the new hospital, getting rid of the old paper is fairly fundamental for them moving forward. And in addition to that, it enables us to bring in lots of electronic information like pathology results, etc. And also for them to do things like e-forms. So rather than filling out sheets of paper in clinic, then Dumfries will be moving towards a paper-light solution, which is their longer term aim. Now, as part of that, I'm not sure why it's not recognising it. Connect to a projector. I've done all of this, but we'll give it another go. Maybe we can go slightly bigger. So part of the process is for us to be able to view all of this information in one simple to see, there we go, application. So what we've done, I'm just going to show you the eCasenote application that we have. It's not a great screen resolution, but hopefully it's not too bad. So what we've got here is the ability to view by a patient number, but all of their information. So this will include, typically within Dumfries and Galloway, we've brought across all the documents that reside in SkyStore. We've also brought across from an old electronic filing system that they had, something called EMREC. We've brought all across all the documents from an EMREC. They had something called an iDrive, which is where they used to do all the Word documents and things like that, and all those documents have been brought in as well. And we're also scanning in lots of the sheets of paper that currently float around the hospital as well. So that includes legacy records, any correspondence that comes into the hospital, and all of that gets attached to that particular patient record. And what it also does is it indexes them and puts them into the new Scottish standard for record filing. So there's actually a standard that all hospitals are applying. We've also put this in Lanarkshire as well, which means that wherever you go in the country, then everybody should have the same filing system theoretically. Obviously the old records are still in the very old formats and a mixture of them. So what we're doing is we're scanning those records in, and within this I'm able to display scanned records, electronic information, and I'm able to do e-forms as well. So I've got in here, for instance, laboratory results that we can see in here. I may have an e-form that's been created internally within the hospital, which may be something that looks like this. So I've got lots of different types of documents within there. And what the hospital is also wanting to do is actually bring across the GP record information as well. This actually uses the GraphNet interface engine, which is approved by EMIS, to extract data on a nightly basis, and it extracts all the read code information associated to that particular patient and presents it within a tree structure which replicates this here. So we'll have any medication that comes across for that particular patient. We'll have any clinical histories. So you can see here how it's got active problems and past problems that are detailed in there. And if I click on active problems, what the hospital would see, this is obviously a very ill patient, it would actually see all of that relevant information associated on the fly. And this is dynamic, so every 24 hours it updates, and it then appears within this system for it to be viewed by the acute hospital. Again, it is a very permission-based system, so you can only see it if you have the permissions to see it. It's not a carte blanche, everybody can see all of the information all of the time, because for instance within Dumfries, mental health is actually held within the same record as orthopaedics and everything else. So each individual document is tagged by its origin, so it says whether it's a mental health, it says whether it's a respiratory, a rheumatology, an orthopaedic, and you only have the permissions to view those documents to which you have the correct relationship to see them. What it does do though is it enables me as an A&E consultant to actually see the full history associated with that particular patient on the fly, rather than having to try and pick the details up as we're going along. And it can also include things like any health promotions, any investigations that have been done in the laboratory, for instance, even down to blood pressure results that have actually put in as well. One of the great things that this does enable you to do is when this is linked into the electronic prescription type systems, I can have a medication summary for this particular patient, and this will then bring across, and the data that is supplied by GPs and the hospital, it will bring across every single bit of medication that patient is being prescribed, both within the community and within the hospital, and obviously includes doses, quantities, the dates of when that actually originated from. So it's about providing a full case note application to the consultants, and I believe the longer term objective, I think this is something you've talked about with Graham, is that you will also have access to this as well. So if you need to view information that may have happened within the hospital, it's a cost-benefit purpose, then you would be able to view and see this as well. So when a patient presents themselves and they've spent 4 weeks in hospital, you'd actually be able to go and view the record and find out what actually happened to them in hospital, rather than spending 10 minutes trying to work it out from a discharge summary and a conversation with the patient. So it's a dual benefit, it works both ways, is the longer term objective, about sharing information across the actual health economy, rather than it being individual silos of data.
Okay. Thoughts? How's that look? I mean, one of the opportunities is that, as Ben said, at the point that we can give them an electron transfer of our medication summary, they can actually pick that up and start using it either to pre-populate an electronic cardex, or indeed to start the process of writing the immediate discharge letter that comes back with the patient. And it avoids some of the issues that, sometimes somebody's typing in a drug name and they get it wrong, and so then there are errors associated with that rekeying exercise. And we've had one or two fairly major ones, even fairly recently in fact. So anything that limits the quantity of rekeying of information has got to be a good thing, really.
Are there any difficulties with data protection and confidentiality and all that? 'Cause it's been quite difficult to get information shared between GPs, even the electronic care summary. I think there's a lot of difficulty in getting people to agree to.
There's
Online, not patients. Patients don't see the problem usually.
No, I mean, as far as I understand, and Ben, correct me if this is wrong, as far as I understand, the consent model for accessing the GP data as it would be presented in this way is actually exactly the same as it is for the ECS at the moment. So the consent is implied, if you like, in terms of upload, but has to be specific at the point you want to view. So at the point somebody hits the I want to look at the GP information button or folder or whatever, a dialog box would ping up and actually just remind the person that they had to seek explicit consent from the patient, and they would tick the box and say they've done that, which would then allow them access. And there's an audit trail obviously behind all of that. If the patient's unconscious, obviously you do have the access, you're able to sort of break the glass and get in, but again you would have to put in a reason for having to do that. So I think the security around it is pretty good on the whole. Interestingly, the number of people who have opted out of having their information shared through the emergency care summary process is very, very small. I mean, it's fractions of a percent. There was one notable practice in Dumfries and Galloway that opted out. I think probably 3/4 of all of the patients who had opted out in Scotland. But since Dr. Beers retired, the problem's been sorted. Sorry, I shouldn't name names. It's unfair, but I mean that was a particular sort of situation which was a little bit peculiar. I think.
With the diabetic transfer of information, we had 20% refuse. Because of the cross-border issues.
Right.
Because they were going to Carlisle, and their normal route was to Carlisle, so they didn't see why their information should go to Dumfries.
Which is probably not unreasonable.
No, so we did have a 20%
Yeah.
people turn around and say no.
But you presumably haven't. That's because it was an explicit consenting process for sharing that sort of data.
Wasn't so, as it is now.
Yeah.
But we had no one refuse these.
I mean, the system has the potential to sook out every single read code in EMIS, but I really don't think that's what we want to do. I think we want to be very specific about the stuff that's actually going to be useful. So, hence the question about it needing to be significant active and significant past problems. Really, everything else is a bit superfluous. Possibly immunisations.
The big problem could be an information overload scenario as well. Is actually getting far too much information for someone to actually find it useful.
And that's the problem with taking a complete extract of a GP record. I think
And the
if you actually
accuracies that are there.
yeah, exactly.
It's a fine balance, and being honest is that it's probably not viewed very often. I think if you went to an outpatient clinic, they would never even consider looking at it. They'd see the tab there and they know they could click on it. And they've got the patient in front of them, so can I view your record? Yes, everyone would say yes. So it's our it's a bit like could use it lots of different examples, but if in those types of scenarios, they probably a clinician will only view 1 or 2 bits of information, previous letter, previous clinical note. It's a bit like if we scan in a legacy record. It's only viewed 4 times on average once it's been scanned in. That's it. The information is actually not viewed very often. It's probably more about your emergency care and those critical care pathways than it is about your 95% of your general. And in those situations, the information overload is probably useful.
Some of the scenarios we get with stuff coming in DocMan is where some practices will have scanned everything through on a PDF, and then it's just nigh impossible to search for stuff and find it.
I mean, it does split everything up into, because it's coded and it's electronic data. It splits everything up into these relevant.
That's only as good as the person that's scanning it in.
This is not scanned. This is all your electronic information.
Yeah,
This is only your electronic.
But you're right, Andrew. It's only as good as the person doing the coding.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if you've got a bunch of erroneous codes, and we all have wonky codes in our systems, and that is the concern. I think the chances of the significant stuff being coded correctly is probably rather better than all of the other snotty noses and ingoing toenail type stuff, which is really some of it's a bit iffy.
I mean, some hospitals, and I've used Trafford Hospitals as the example, for instance, when they have a number of specialist forms, so they've got something here like a diabetic patient summary, for instance. So they will have specific specialities where they want to be able to go in, they can look at the relevant values and results, and they can see things like weight. Yeah. Now, as a GP practice, you also record the weight, so they can see any fluctuations that are happening within the community as well as within the acute, for instance. And so in areas like that, the information overload, it's just about the system enables you to extract the relevant bits for what you want to see. You're not always seeing this global view, for instance. It's very much, pick a little bit of data from here, here and here and put it into my shopping basket, and that's all I want to use.
So is values something that we should consider sharing then, or on the basis of that?
Reason why not.
Yep. That's not something I'd considered. So we might want to add that in at some point, Ben. Okay, so that's where we're at with the electronic case now. Any other thoughts or questions about that? I mean, that's as you can probably imagine, a pretty enormous piece of work for the infirmary, trying to replace the barrow loads of paper that are currently wheeled around. But also complicated by the fact that, you know, that we have community hospitals, we've got Stranraer, and you know, we need to try and coordinate all of that in some shape or form. So there's a lot of planning and effort going to go in.
Would this case note be viewable in the community hospital as
Well, it has
with
to
the
be.
patient? And what about, say, if they then go up to Glasgow for an appointment? Can it be viewed there as well? Or?
There's the ability for them to view that, and certainly there's also the ability to extract all this information and put it into a little fancy file that they can just send it to them as well. So there's different ways in which that can happen, but certainly it sits within your local wide area network, so it's viewable by any location. And it plugs into, it's actually also within your CareFX portal as well. So it's viewable in Lothian, Borders, and
Will it integrate with the English systems?
with
The English systems?
In terms of being viewable,
Or importable too?
it converts everything to PDF.
Right.
So yeah, they can
it's
view
a
it.
pretty standard file format.
Yeah, PDF is the standard image format that everybody uses.
That's if you're extracting.
Yeah. So you can extract all of this out. So if a patient's going to Glasgow, for instance, they could just say extract, and it just produces a nice little zip file with all the information in a nice lot in the Scottish National Standard indexing standard order.
Excellent standard it is too.
which to be fair, only Lanarkshire and Dumfries and Galloway use, and everyone else would look at and go, well, where the hell's my documents? But there we go.
Okay. Thanks very much, Ben, for coming. I realise you've got a long journey ahead
Just a
of
wee
you,
drive,
so
just a wee drive.
feel free to leg it while you can.
That's fine. If you obviously, if any questions do arise, if you push them through Neil, if that's
Yep,
okay.
absolutely,
and,
yep.
and
No
he's
problem
got
at
my
all.
contact details to fire them through.
Okay, right. Do you want to sort of unzip
Yeah,
yourself?
I'll just do the early wise impression again.
Okay. Don't unplug anything else. Right. We're now going to hear about the EMIS roadmap, I think, plus various other things, I think. Thank you very much for coming. You have been to be confirmed on Alex's programme for a little while. So we're jolly pleased to see you. And thank you very much for coming. Are you heading all the way back down to Leeds tonight, or are you?
No, back to Glasgow.
Oh, that's not quite so bad. Not quite so bad. Right. What do you need? Do you want to plug in? Ben's brick out of the way.
Breeze block. I know, it's awful, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, off you go. Thank you very much. Your desktop looks almost as bad as mine.
It doesn't. Oh, there we go. There you go. Right. It's okay. So, for anybody that hasn't met me before, I'm Fiona Leishman, account manager for Scotland. I send you emails now and again. Sometimes I pop in to see you. I'm going to go over some things today. Aileen's listened to this already in the last week, so I'm going to repeat myself. Going to look at the patch process and change that's happened this month. Some stuff that's coming up on the roadmap for next year that is quite interesting for you guys. Just kind of going to go over the escalation process and let you know what's there available for you to do if you need to escalate something. Patient access, and then a little bit about GP Web Solutions. So, this month we moved to our new patching cycle. So that means that we're going to have 6 patches a year instead of 12 from now on. It means that we've got a clinical testing phase before it moves on to the next phase and then out to general release. And what that means is that everybody in the country will be on the same patch level for 2 weeks, which has never ever happened before. But everybody in the country, after the general release, will be on the same patch level for a fortnight before the next patch starts to roll out. So it'll be an 8-weekly process instead of the 4-weekly one that we're in just now. Like it says, clinical witness testing and consolidation period. So what happens just now, or what's started to happen now, is anything that you request as a change goes to the GP change advisory board, and they consider it. It's then, if they feel that it's worthy, it's moved on to EMIS to price and give a time scale on the development work for it. It's then sent back to the change advisory board and they prioritise that. So requests come from practices, from health boards, from SNUG, through us, but everything now no longer just lands in all these inboxes. It's central and it's put to the change advisory board and that team look at it. So this year there's been some things prioritised and we're looking at these for next year. I don't have the final roadmap because at the moment it has been designed by EMIS, so we've prioritised the work. We've sent it back to the CAB GPIT group, or Change Advisory Board. They are reprioritising it and they'll send it back to us and then we'll publish it. But what's made it on to next year is first quarter independent nurse prescribing. It's going to be fixed, instalment dispensing text for non-GPs and EMIS messaging for stored scripts. So that means if you used to use your stored scripts in GPAS and you haven't been since you moved to PCS because it doesn't print the barcode, you'll be able to do it once this bit is sorted out. Alright. What else happens with the Change Advisory Board and EMIS is that we're trying to bulk requests. So there's been a lot of requests for improvements in the appointment book. So instead of just doing 1 or 2, we've tried to look at the list and take what's on there and bulk it so that we're doing one big development instead of a little bit here and there. So some things that are coming next year with the appointment book is that we're going to start wrapping the text. Instead of your cell widening when you put in a slot note, it's going to get deeper. So it's going to do that. So it's not going to make your book this long, but it's going to affect the cell depth. So that'll go for slot notes, and I think it also will affect reasons as well. So if reasons are quite long too. Tool tips. So now when you hover over something and all sorts of systems, you get a little bit of information. Well, that's what's going to happen in the appointment book. So it might be that you still decide to hide your slot notes. Instead of doing the right click to view them, if you hover over the appointment, it'll appear as a tooltip. So the slot note will be visible that way. It's leaving PCS as an active window. And again, it's talking about widening cells. Going to have better links between medical record, the diary and appointments. So I haven't seen what that would be yet, but I've been told that it's just going to make life easier instead of having to go from one to the other. It might be a right click and select a book appointment or something like that. There's going to be an easier link between all of these sections of the record. And there's going to be a booked option when it comes to past or DNA'd appointments, linking directly from the medical record to the appointment book scene. Population Manager, you're going to get a bit of control over that, and you're going to be able to configure when it runs. So your How Am I Driving and your Look Ahead. At the moment it's set to 119 on the next, so you'll be able to change that. I'm going to put a view find into patient prescribing. At the moment you can do it in medical records, so view find, and it might be a code or a word or something. Just makes it quick, it's easy. We're going to put that into prescribing as well. And child search options for Population Manager cough searches. Anybody ever tried to run a child search on a cough search? Yeah. It's not so easy. It's a bit fiddly. You have to build a patient list from the search results, and then you need to pull the patient list into the search that you're building. It's quite a clunky process, so we're looking to make that much smoother process for you. So cutting and pasting and copying from tasks. At the moment you might be viewing tasks, closing the task, remembering what the task said, flipping back to the task to reread what the task said, to then type it in consultation. We're going to right click, cut, paste, copy. It's going to be there, it's going to work. So you'll be able to lift the data from the task and paste it into the consultation. Instalment dispensing text. So this is going to allow you to apply it to all the medication if you want to, or select multiple medications and apply it instead of one at a time. Okay, some updates that will be coming. So we've got KISS at the moment, so we've got some updates that happen to that in this patch. We're looking at some point next year that rolling out and everybody using the key information summary. GP to GP, so that's a transfer of medical records instead of the way we do it now with the notes arriving and accepting it in document. GP to GP will send it from clinical system to clinical system. CMS, I know there's some sites in Dumfries and Galloway already using CMS, but there's some functionality changes due for that. And then the drug dosage issue, that should be, we're looking to finalise that. As it says, details and timescales will be communicated. We're working really closely with the Change Advisory Board, so we're waiting on those guys, reprioritising that roadmap, sending it back, and then we'll publish it in some format. So it'll be sent probably from ourselves or the CAB group to the health board and the facilitators, and it'll be available to view. Right, the escalation process. I don't know how many people know this, but you can escalate a problem after you've raised the initial ECR. So if you feel that it's not being resolved quickly enough, or it's how it's been handled isn't to your satisfaction, you've got the option to hit the escalation button 24 hours after raising the initial ECR. What that does is sends it to the first line, and I've found that I never really need to escalate it any further than that first one, because the response is quite quick. But if you feel again that that's not being dealt with quickly enough, 24 hours later you can raise it to second. That then goes to department manager, and again, I've not really known anybody that's had to go that far, but that facility's there for you guys to do it. If again you feel that you're not satisfied, 24 hours later again you can hit escalate, and that takes it to the third line. Done that once and my phone rang instantly. So those buttons are held within your ECR tracker. 24 hours after you've raised your first ECR, you can hit the escalation button if you need to. That's there. You can use it 24 hours apart 3 times if you need to, but I do find
longer.
You can wait longer.
Or I'm thinking, is it inappropriate use if you've had things that you've thought, oh no, that's something that we could do is getting fixed, I'll put that on the tracker, and 6 weeks down the line, have you heard anything about that? Because it's obviously a low priority.
That's quite a long time to wait though. 6 weeks.
So is that appropriate use, or
If it's there might be something that's extremely urgent to the practice and you feel that it's not being dealt with quickly enough, that's an appropriate use. So it's there for you guys to use. I find sometimes that an ECR gets raised and a few days later a practice emails me and says, Fiona, I raised this ECR and it's not getting dealt with, or nobody's phoned me back yet, or it just seems to be taking too long. That's what that button's there for. If I got emails like that, I would go into the ECR tracker and I'd hit the button. So I'm just telling you that that's there for you guys to hit if you want to, if you feel that there's a need to use it. You can raise it, you can do it 3 times and it goes to certain levels of support management. I've only ever had to go to level 3 once and I got an instant phone call with a really good explanation. So you never really need to go any further than level 1, but you can if you need to. The other thing that I would encourage you to do is score an ECR. We try to keep track of what's happening, and we really do work on feedback. And at the moment, the only feedback we ever get, which is nice, is good feedback. Nobody tells us what we did wrong. And how can we fix it if we don't know what your opinion is of what we did wrong? So what I would really like to do is encourage you to start using the score button. If you feel that you were spoken to in a bad manner, or the communication wasn't good enough, or it took too long, or even if it is good feedback, that's still lovely to receive, but we want to hear your honest opinion of what's happening with your ECRs, how you feel that they're being treated. Do you feel that you're being prioritised enough? That sort of thing. So the score button is available in the resolved tab within the ECR tracker, and it really, I know it's asking you to do a little bit extra, but it really does only take a minute to hit the button, put in a comment and then hit send. But we do work on that feedback, so if you've got the time and if you want to use it for good or bad, then please use it. Patient access. Okay, I don't know if there's anybody in the room that uses online appointment booking through patient access. Yeah, there's not very many practices in Scotland that do use it, but it's in your system. If you were a vision user, you'd have to pay for this. You guys have already got it built in, you just need to switch it on. It's there and it allows you to allow your patients to book their appointments online, which you have complete control over. You decide what appointments go online, whose appointments go online, and what patients get to book online, and you can control who's using it, and you can take away user IDs and passwords if you feel that it's being abused, because there's an audit system and a reporting part of it. The other thing that you can do is let them see their medical record online. That's a tick box to make it not happen as well. So it's not that you need to do a tick for every patient, it's just that you can figure your system to either have appointments and medical records or just appointments. The other functions that are there and are coming are things like change of address messaging. I think at the moment, or recently, we've moved from the practice having to reset the passwords and things to the patient being able to reset their own password online. So that takes a wee bit of pressure off the practice having to reissue passwords. The other thing that's coming is repeat prescribing ordering online, so the patient can order the repeats on there. Don't have an exact date for that, but that's coming at some point next year.
Rob promised us it would be by the end of quarter 1.
Yep. Well, I hope that it is by the end of quarter 1, because I did hear him promise that.
Is that calendar quarter 1 or financial?
Calendar quarter 1.
I heard them, so hopefully at the start of the year we'll see it, but it is already in development, so it is coming. That's there. You don't need to, you can turn it on just now and have a look at it if you want to. All you need to do is raise an ECR and ask for the icons to be put on your desktop, because they're already sitting there in the background. You might have somebody in the practice that's a patient. You could, that's one of the staff members that's a patient, or something like that, you could issue them a user ID and password and just play with it for months if you like, configure it for months if you like, get used to it if you want to before you give any patients access. But other system suppliers make you pay for it. It's already there for you guys, and there's a big push just now on giving patients access and more ways of accessing practice. So it's there. If anybody wants any information on it, any leaflets, that kind of thing, then you just need to get in touch and we'll get something out to you. But if you want to switch it on, just raise an ECR. Alright. So, who has a website? Do you like your website? Do you do a lot of work on it yourself?
Does it all?
Yeah, oh, which is nothing.
Right. What we've got is GP Web Solutions. What? That'll be a thing. Right. So GP Web Solutions is Egton's website, and what you get with GP Web Solutions is a free trial period, and it's not set on 1 month, 2 months or whatever. It's for as long as you like until you're happy to make your site live. You get to choose a modern, attractive design, unlimited pages, so you basically can pick the content and the amount of pages you want on there. Easy to use editor and free content changes. Free content changes means email us and we'll do it for you. So you can be the administrator and you can update it all the time if you like, or you can say you can stick it in an email and our guys will do it, and that's open to you from start to finish. You can put in patient surveys, travel questionnaires and call forums, so you can have your patients clicking on and they'll maybe just fill in that I'm a smoker while I'm here. That data is then there for you guys to enter into the medical record. Other things that are in there are condition leaflets. They are supplied by patient.co.uk, which is an EMIS website anyway. Patient access, just what I was talking about there, where your patients can go and book their online appointments, so it's all in there. Feedback and complaints forums. Feedback forums. Local services signposting. At the moment we're talking to people like Alice and things like that, but there's already built-in local signposting, local services. So we're in Castle Douglas, what have we got available to us if we're diabetic, that sort of thing, all there, and it would be relevant to your town and area. Real-time health news, Google Maps, Disability Discrimination Act, and it's mobile friendly, so your patients can use their smartphones to have a look at it. Language translation, umpteen languages in there, so all your patients can use it. You can monitor your visitors on it, and your trial's free. That's us. If you want any information on that, then just drop me a line. It's just there. It's competitively priced as well, and the fact that we'll update it for you takes a bit of the pressure off the practice and somebody else having another administration duty as well. Any questions about anything at all, including PCS or anything that I went over tonight? This is easy, come on, I normally get half time.
How many of you have scored your ECRs?
Do you know only eight ECRs were scored in the last quarter when over 7,000 were raised. And they were only good. So that doesn't really give us good. It's good that we get 8 good feedbacks, but it's not really giving us an honest opinion of what's happening out there.
You talk a little bit about the change advisory board process, Fiona. I mean, I suppose it's worthwhile just directing people to the SNUG website, because with the change advisory board change request form is embedded in the SNUG website. So if you think of something that needs to be changed, or you've got something that you're not happy with, then if you fill in one of these forms on the SNUG website, then that will be looked at by the change advisory board. Usually what would happen is that would come back actually